Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission is pretty simple. We take complex research and give you the core insights so you can be well informed fast.
And today, we're looking at sources that have one of the most, well, frankly, one of the most terrifying warnings I've seen in modern ecology.
Yeah, we're going way beyond the whole save the bees slogan.
Way beyond. The sources we analyzed use this one phrase that just stops you in your tracks. They say if key pollinators disappear, half the planet could collapse.
Which, it sounds like an exaggeration. It sounds like hyperbole.
It does.
But that's what this deep dive is for. We're going to unpack how a creature that weighs less than a gram could actually trigger something of that magnitude.
We're talking about the whole chain reaction, the economic shocks, the public health crisis, and something I don't think many people know about, the impact on the actual air we breathe.
Right. So the big question for today really is, how can something so small hold the fate of, well, everyone?
It's a paradox. And the answer is that we've kind of accidentally built our entire global civilization on their free work. And we're only now realizing just how dependent we are.
Okay, let's start there. Let's unpack that dependency with a key number. To really get the scale of this, you have to start with what our sources call the 75% rule.
That statistic is everything.
Yeah.
It is the absolute foundation of this entire crisis.
So what is it?
When scientists analyze the global food system, everything that feeds 8 billion people, they find that 75% of our leading crops rely on animal pollination to produce a good harvest.
75%. That number is huge. But I can already hear people thinking, okay, but what about, wheat and corn and rice, the big stuff?
Right, and that's the key distinction, isn't it? The staple grains. They're mostly wind-pollinated, so yes, we'd still have calories.
But just calories.
Just calories. We could survive, technically, but we would absolutely not thrive. Because those staple foods, they don't give you the nutritional scaffolding for human health.
What do you mean by scaffolding?
I mean, all the micronutrients. The vast majority of our vitamin C, vitamin A, antioxidants, essential minerals, that all comes from pollinated foods.
So we'd have a diet that could keep us going, but it would be so deficient in everything that actually keeps us healthy, that keeps our immune systems working.
Exactly. You take away fruits like berries, apples, all the citrus. You take away nuts like almonds, vegetables like squash and broccoli, all of which need pollinators.
And you've basically created a global health crisis.
A massive one. You'd have a population that is just incredibly vulnerable to disease.
And okay, beyond the nutritional collapse, we have to talk about the things that make life enjoyable, the things that would just disappear.
This is where it gets really personal, I think.
Right.
Think about your morning, that cup of coffee. It relies on pollination. And then think about your favorite treat, chocolate. The cacao plant needs these tiny, specialized little midges to pollinate its flowers.
Little midges, not even bees.
Not even bees. And if those little pollinators vanish, which they are, your favorite dark chocolate bar basically becomes a priceless antique.
So that 75% number, it really transforms this whole thing from some abstract environmental issue into a personal survival issue. You suddenly see the direct line between a tiny insect and the stability of our entire society.
It connects to everyone because it hits the things we all care about.
Yeah.
Our health, our pleasure, and our stability. It's the end of choice at the grocery store. It's the beginning of extreme scarcity.
And it doesn't just stop at the grocery store, does it? The research we looked at details this horrifyingly fast domino effect if things really go wrong. Can you walk us through that collapse sequence?
Yeah, the cascading failure is
Right.
It's dramatic. The best way to think about it is like the entire ecosystem is this giant inverted pyramid.
Yeah.
And the tiny point it's all balancing on, that's the pollinators.
Okay, so what's the first domino to fall?
The first one is that the engine just stops. The bees, the butterflies, all key pollinators are gone. That means 75% of flowering plants suddenly have no way to reproduce efficiently.
They can't make seeds for the next generation.
Exactly. The existing plants are still there for a season, maybe, but their ability to regenerate, it just plummets.
And what's next in that chain?
The second phase follows fast. All the animals that eat those plants, the herbivores, birds, small mammals, their food source vanishes. Their populations crash. It's mass extinction, but it's not triggered by a new predator. It's triggered by an absence.
The entire food web just dismantles because the foundation is gone.
Yeah.
And what's wild is how quickly the sources say this moves from an ecological problem to a human catastrophe.
It shifts very, very quickly. Our economic systems are not built for this kind of scarcity. The sources talk about insane price spikes. I mean, can you imagine an apple or a few almonds costing hundreds of dollars,
Yeah.
reserved only for the super rich?
That kind of scarcity doesn't just make things expensive, it leads to riots. It leads to societal breakdown.
Absolutely. It triggers massive political instability. But the most sinister part, as we touched on, is the health collapse. When entire populations are suddenly deprived of micronutrients. Think about a lack of vitamin C leading to scurvy coming back, a lack of vitamin A causing blindness in children. Outbreaks of disease become far, far more deadly.
There's this one chilling line in the source material that really stuck with me. It said we could literally die of starvation or disease without a single shot being fired, just from the quiet removal of the systems that keep us stable.
That quiet absence, that's the real threat. It's not an attack, it's the silence where there used to be a buzz.
Okay, so we've covered the food crisis, the economic collapse, the health disaster, but now we have to get to the aha moment, the part that takes this crisis from our kitchen tables and puts it into the very air we breathe.
This is where the problem becomes truly planetary. It's not just about what we eat anymore. The science suggests a major pollinator collapse could actually lead to a measurable drop in global oxygen levels.
Okay, but hang on. Reduced oxygen. That feels like a huge leap. I mean, didn't we all learn in school that the planet's lungs are, the Amazon rainforest and plankton in the oceans?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's what most people think. And it's true, the oceans are the biggest single oxygen factory. But the key here is to think about biomass on a global scale.
So not just one big forest.
Exactly. Aggregate all the plant life on land that needs pollination. Not just trees, but billions of flowering plants, shrubs, ground cover on every single continent. Together, they contribute a really significant chunk to the planet's oxygen cycle through photosynthesis.
So it's like a distributed network.
A perfect way to put it. Each little field of wildflowers is a tiny oxygen factory. Multiply that by millions of acres all over the world, and the total output is essential for a stable atmosphere. If those plants can't reproduce, if that biomass shrinks, that oxygen output drops.
So if that massive distributed system starts to fail at scale, we'd feel the effects everywhere.
We would. The source uses this incredibly powerful phrase to describe it. It calls it the slow suffocation of the planet.
Wow.
It elevates the whole crisis, doesn't it? It's not an agricultural problem anymore. It's a fundamental threat to the atmosphere we need to survive.
That really puts the efforts to save pollinators into a much starker perspective. I mean, it's not just a conservation project at that point. It's a race against caloric and atmospheric collapse.
It is.
So what are scientists actually doing about it? What are the mitigation efforts?
Well, the efforts are coming from all angles, but a lot of them feel like we're playing catch-up. On the tech front, you have some fascinating, if slightly creepy, work on pollinator robots.
So tiny drones to replace bees?
Essentially, yeah, in controlled environments like greenhouses. Then you have the more natural solutions, planting urban gardens, creating corridors of native flowers for them to travel. But the biggest fight is in agriculture itself. It's the push to reduce our use of pesticides.
You mentioned a specific type before we started, systemic pesticides. What makes them so dangerous?
Well, that's where it gets really insidious. See, older pesticides just sat on the surface of a plant. A bug had to touch it. But systemic pesticides, they're absorbed into the plant.
So the whole plant becomes toxic.
The whole plant. From the roots up to the leaves, the nectar, the pollen. So when a bee comes to feed, it's not getting an external dose, it's ingesting poison.
And that kills it.
It can kill it outright,
Yeah.
but more often it does something worse. It damages its nervous system, it can't navigate, it can't find its way back to the hive. You get this slow, invisible attrition of the entire workforce.
Turning their food source into a weapon against them.
Precisely.
But even with all these efforts, the robots, the gardens, trying to cut back on pesticides, the sources we read have this really dire warning that this isn't a problem we can just manage forever.
Right. And this brings up the idea of the point of no return. Scientists are really worried that if the pollinator populations drop below a certain threshold, the whole system will enter what they call a collapse spiral.
A collapse spiral? How does that work?
It's a huge negative feedback loop. So plant populations decline, which makes the local ecosystem less stable. That makes it harder for the few remaining pollinators to survive. Less food for them means they die off faster, which means even less pollination.
And the cycle just accelerates downward.
It accelerates downward until the system can't bounce back. It becomes irreversibly broken.
So all these efforts, they're really a frantic race against that tipping point.
It's a race to stop the spiral before it can't be stopped. And every year we see these declines continue, we get a little bit closer to that edge.
After going through all this, the thing that I keep coming back to is that central paradox you mentioned right at the start.
That the fate of everything, our food, our economy, maybe even the air, rests on a creature that weighs less than a gram.
It's truly humbling. It really shows you that in any complex system, it's the smallest, most overlooked parts that often control the biggest outcomes. We spend all our time worrying about financial markets and geopolitics.
And we forget the biological foundation that everything else is built on.
Exactly.
And that's really the core insight here, just understanding how vulnerable that foundation is.
Right.
It's the first step.
Yeah.
When you see a bee now, you're not just looking at an insect. You're looking at a tiny engine of stability doing one of the most important jobs on Earth.
So we'll leave you with this to think about this week. If the future of our civilization really does rest on the unseen work of a creature weighing less than a gram, what other seemingly insignificant, quiet processes are you taking for granted right now?
That's a great question.
What's the small, unnoticed driver of stability in your own life, in your family, in your work, that if it were suddenly gone would trigger its own devastating collapse? Try to notice those small, essential things this week and appreciate them.
A perfect challenge.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.